here. Pulley, here. Roten, Sledge, not here. Saguaro, here. Syracuse, great. Toombs, Van Reese, here. Bercher, great. I detect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's enough to get started, right? Okay. So we'll begin with the consent agenda. Actually, no, we will begin with the update from our Metro Water Services. If you'll tell us where we are with trash. I'll give you a mic. Thank you. Recognize Mr. Potter. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair. Members of Council, I want to give you an update about where we are on trash pickup. It's a good news and bad news scenario. I'll thankfully start with the good news first. We brought on 2 contractors last week to help us pick up the dumpsters, and they're taking a significant load off of the demands on the Metro crews, and that started Monday, today, and we feel really comfortable and confident with the combination of the 2 new contractors and Metro staff in keeping the dumpsters emptied on time. The bad news is the continued poor performance of Red River and the cascading failure therein. We informed Red River leadership today that we were going to take 3 of their routes starting tomorrow and going to keep them until Red River can establish better performance and consistent performance. And if Red River cannot continue to improve or show any improvement at all, we'll continue to take routes as required to get the trash picked up on time. We are in a really precarious position legally, and I'm not going to try to expound on that other than I'm discussing this topic almost daily with membership of Metro Legal and outside counsel to get this solved. But we're in a precarious position, and we're doing everything we can to maintain as much assets available to us as we can, because we don't want to get in a position where we don't have anything available to us. So with that, I'll answer your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Potter? Councilmember Vercher.
Thank you so much, Chair. I believe I stated this when we started having these updates as it relates to trash. And just to speak candid, when the city had less money and we were asking for departmental cuts, there was no interruptions, well, minimal interruptions to service. And I can only speak for my district, but they're beyond livid. What's happening now, we have rats in the community. We have raccoons. We have dogs tipping over trash bins. So the concern is extended beyond just no lack of trash collection. And we have these updates, and I thank Metro Water, Director Potter, and prayers going out to Mr. Honeysucker. But at the end of the day, the accountability falls on us. And we've gone from trying to work contract legalities, so forth, and we're still getting nowhere. And I'm just speaking for myself. I'm beyond fed up with it. And I don't know who needs to make the decision to fix it. Because at this point, that's all we need. We need to fix it. We raise taxes on our citizens. We raise taxes on our citizens. And now they are not getting the services. I don't know why the decision was made to bring recycling back, and we hadn't fully got trash collection straight yet.
Is that a question?
No, I'm expressing my concern, okay. Chair.
I just was waiting.
And give me the respect, please. Because these updates are basically meaningless. Every week we come, we know we're getting the same information because the problem still exists. This has been going on for 2 years. 2 years. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vercher. Mr. Potter, could you respond to the question about whether perhaps we might need to go back to using recycling trucks to keep things on track?
That is an option. We're trying to avoid that.
I think people
because
appreciate that.
It's, I share the council lady's extraordinary frustration.
Do we have data somewhere that could show which areas have had,
It's the southeast.
it's the southeast?
I mean, the council lady's district is getting hammered, and that's a fact.
Is there a way to redistribute out resources to that area?
When we get the ability to have stability, we're going to look at the entire county and spread the risk around a little bit.
Thank you.
Because the risk is to the southeastern part of the county because their pickup days are later in the week.
Later in the week.
So I recognize that, and she's right. And it's wrong that the citizens are facing this.
Thank you. That's unfortunate acknowledgement, but I appreciate that. Councilmember Parker. Let me find you. There you are.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, though I'm not on this committee. If I could address Director Potter, so I just saw an announcement that the mayor's office made about seeking the ability to sort of proactively assign some of these routes elsewhere. As it stands now, under the contract that we have with Red River, do we have to wait a certain number of days after they have failed to do the pickup in order for us to go do it or to have another contractor do it? Or how does it work right now?
I don't want to try to explain the legalities to the degree a lawyer could, but I'll speak generally. We have remedies that we could employ. A perfect example is liquidated damages. If we pursue that option, we're furthering the harm possibility to us because the objective is to keep Red River functioning on life support rather than disappear. So balancing the risk to the city is the paramount problem here. So what we're trying to do is get as much help as we can within the completely difficult venue of a bankruptcy proceeding. What I would like to do is not really possible in a lot of cases based on the circumstances we find ourselves in from the bankruptcy. I fully recognize the council's frustration, and it's valid. My trash gets picked up late every week as well. That makes me angry. But I've got to keep as much asset availability as I can, or it will get worse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any update on supply chain issues? Are we beginning to see some relief there?
Not particularly.
Okay.
We can provide you updates on the fleet purchase. I am fully convinced that General Services fleet are doing everything they can to get stuff fixed. Unfortunately, it is the perfect storm.
Right.
And I go back to my statement that I am doing everything in my power to bring as much asset to bear as I can.
Thank you. We appreciate the update and the work that's being done, and we understand the frustration people are feeling. We need to continue to work on it, and we appreciate the information on a regular basis. Any other questions for Mr. Potter? Councilmember Suara.
Thank you. I just want to say that we want to move beyond understanding the people's frustration, especially when the problem is isolated to a certain part of the city. I think it's very important, and I will urge the director that whatever you need to do, you now have exchanged email with you this weekend from that part of town. And so anytime that there's a problem and it's isolated to a place, it becomes another issue entirely, right? Because that part of town is mostly minority. And whether it's intentional or not, which I don't think it is, that is the perception, right? So if it was in another part of town and people are crying, would we rush and do something?
Well,
And that's what I want to
one
say.
thing to note is the The map on Hub right now that shows the problem areas is all inclusive.
Not just a
Yes,
certain
ma'am.
part of South, because the people that have been emailing me are from a certain part of this. But is this a certain part of town, right? It is Southeast.
Well, there are problems all over the county.
Okay. Well, I'm going from what you said and acknowledge that it's mostly Southeast. That's what make me get up.
Historically, it's been the southeast.
Okay. So I just want to say, let's just move to please do something to address that as soon as we can. And I appreciate you doing all you can. If I live in Southeast and I keep hearing the same thing every time, Councilmember Sepulveda got up mad the last time talking about that area, and we're still talking about the area. I think we need to do something. And whatever we need to do, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We appreciate it. Let's get on to budget so we can get to the joint meeting of budget and planning as well. We'll begin with the consent agenda. I'll read out the items on consent. Please let me know if I need to take any of these off, beginning with resolutions. RS 2020-22, 1379, 1382, 1383, 1384, 1385, 1386, 1387, 1389, and one bill, BL 2022, 1112. Do any of those items need to come off of consent? Councilmember Suara,
Is 1379 on consent?
can you use your mic between the two?
Sorry?
That's okay.
Do you have, I did not catch the beginning, was 1379 on consent?
1379 is currently on consent. Would you like for me to take that one off?
Yes, and if you will also please take off the BL 1112 as well.
Okey doke. Great. I'll read the captions on the others, and if anybody has any others you want to take off, just let me know. On consent is RS 2022-1382. Sponsors Allen, Evans, Sawar, and others. Approves a grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration to the Metro Office of Family Safety to host a Tennessee Family Justice Center statewide symposium to enhance the statewide network of family justice centers and increase the capacity and skill of statewide teams. Next is RS 2022-1383, sponsors Allen, Bradford, Welsh, and Stiles. This approves a Tennessee Nonprofit Arts and Culture Recovery Fund grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission to the Metro Arts Commission to provide general operating support of artist, art programs, research, and community engagement. Next on consent is RS 2022-1384, sponsors Allen, Evans, Hancock, and Bradford. This approves a grant from the Nashville Predators Foundation to the Metro Board of Health's Animal Care and Control to help support reduced pet adoption fees to reduce overcrowding. Next on consent is RS 2022-1385, sponsors Allen, Evans, Sawar, and Welsh. This approves an amendment to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metro Board of Health to provide the Community Health Access and Navigation in Tennessee program to deliver comprehensive care coordination services to eligible families and children. Next on consent is RS 2022-1386, sponsors Allen, Evans, Hurt, and Welsh. This approves an amendment to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metro Board of Health to improve the health of those residing in or visiting Davidson County through targeted strategies to prevent and control the use of tobacco products. Next on consent is RS 2022-1387, sponsors Allen, Withers, Young, and others, approves an intergovernmental agreement between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure and CSX Transportation for resurfacing from west of Harpeth Valley Road to east of Hillwood Boulevard. Next on consent is RS 2022-1389, sponsors Roten, Allen, Bradford, and Stiles. This approves an in-kind grant from the Nature Conservancy to the Metro Board of Parks and Recreation to fund restoration and cleanup efforts at Little Bend Park. And we'll do the resolutions and come back and do bills. Well, I did read I'll do this bill on consent as well. Nope, it was taken off. Okay, so that is the consent agenda. Are there any other items that need to be pulled off of consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion for approval? Thank you. And a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Any opposed? Say no. Any abstaining? Consent agenda passes 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Now we'll go back to items that are not on consent, beginning with RS 2022-1379. This authorizes the Department of Law to compromise and settle Robert Green's claim against Metro government employee Judge Linda Jones in the amount of $25,000, with $15,000 reflecting back pay to be paid out of the General Sessions Court operating budget and the remaining $10,000 to be paid out of the Judgments and Losses Fund. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Saguaro.
Thank you, Chair. In looking at the fiscal analysis for this particular resolution, my understanding was that it was out of a termination of an employee that spoke to the media about reporting information to ICE. I know it's been some time, so I wanted to check with Mr. Jamison, if you do know, the allegations and the information that were presented then before the employee was fired, have those been addressed? And I also know the analysis says that the committee of judges have not done any ruling before the firing. So was there, I just wanted to make sure that whatever was identified as issued at that time have been addressed. I'm not addressing whether the legal or the payment, I'm not doing that, but there was an allegation of information being leaked. And so any update on that?
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you, Chair. Every claim is handled by the Metro Legal Department, and the specific attorney at the Metro Legal Department that addressed this one is Ms. Mallory Ricci, who's in the audience with us, and I'm going to ask her if she can address your questions.
Thank you. If you'll just move to the lectern and introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Mallory Ricci on behalf of Metro Legal, and I also have Mr. Kyle Sowell with me on behalf of the General Sessions Court Department. And we may end up having to tag team to answer these questions. I believe the first question from Council Lady Suara was regarding whether the ICE issue was resolved, and I'll defer to Mr. Sowell on his department's dealing with that particular issue.
Mr. Sowell?
Members of the council, I became the court administrator for General Sessions Court on October 1st, 2020. So I was not employed as the court administrator at the time when the issues regarding communications between our probation department and ICE were taking place. Now, since I've been court administrator, my understanding and knowledge and belief is that to the extent that there were any communications whatsoever between our probation department and ICE regarding the status of any of our probationers, that is not taking place and has not taken place since I've been the court administrator.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Suara? Okay. Was there a second question? No.
That's the main thing.
Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Good to know that that has been resolved. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? You recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Next is RS 2022-1381, sponsors Parker, Allen, Suara, and others. This modifies RS 2021-1116, which appropriates $3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds to provide rent, mortgage, and utilities payments to extend the coverage date through June 30th, 2023, and to expand mortgage relief to all participants who have household income up to and including 100% of AMI. And do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Wiggins, since you're here, if you could just give us a quick explanation, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The original award for $3 million for the rent and mortgage and utility relief was aimed at filling a gap for applicants to the HOPE Fund. So to be eligible for the HOPE funds that MAC is distributing, you had to have 80% or less of the average median income. And that is only for rent and the utilities. MAC had a different pool of funds that was available for mortgage relief. That pool of funds has now been depleted. So there are individuals who are under the 80% AMI, but they do not qualify for the $3 million that was originally awarded to United Way's partners, because that was for over 80% up to 100%. So what this amendment is doing is expanding the eligibility for mortgage relief for anyone from under 100% AMI. So it's expanding it to the lower income families that don't have access through anything for MAC now. And then because there's been a slower start on distributing the funds, they really just asked at this point, will these funds still expire on June 30 of 2022? And we said, since they don't by ARP requirements, let's just go ahead and give you another year to distribute those funds. So the primary purpose of this amendment is to expand the eligibility for families needing mortgage relief under 80%. It also extends it for one more year.
Thank you so much. Any other questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Next is RS 2022-1388, sponsors Johnston, Allen, Withers, and Young. This approves an amendment to an agreement between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure for the acceptance of work in connection with the construction of a sidewalk on Harding Place from Danby Drive to Nolensville Pike. I have a letter from the sponsor asking for approval. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If I might just ask someone why the 3-year delay, if anyone knows that. Mr. Fields.
Yes, ma'am. This is Billy Fields at NDOT. There were some issues related to the right-of-way and the easement of, well, you know, you'd think I'd be able to, the right-of-way acquisitions have been delayed more than we would have liked. We're certainly going to be working on them as hard as we can, but that's the issue.
Okay. Not the first time that's happened. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? I recommend approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Next is RS 2022-1390, sponsors Allen, Evans, and Stiles. This approves a Project Safe Neighborhoods grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration to the Metro Nashville Police Department to reduce gun-related violence in Nashville by funding additional training, staff overtime, and the purchase of additional forensic equipment. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If I could ask, is that Commander Gilder, just to briefly explain what this does and if this works with any other violence interruption type of programs that are going on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So this is the PSN grant. This is, I believe, the third one we've had where we take funds to utilize overtime for our Titans teams. Titans teams are the group that work out of our strategic, that's where I'm assigned. Our Specialized Investigations Division. They conduct specific enforcement on folks that are involved in gun crimes. So they're very targeted investigations. They work to link, a lot of times these guns are used in multiple offenses across the city. They work pretty hard to make those links and figure out who's actually pulling the trigger in these cases. And they work closely with our crime lab, utilizing NIBIN, which is a federal system that basically like fingerprints shell casings. And part of what this grant does is fund an additional machine it's called Brass Tracks, an additional machine to speed along that process and make those connections faster.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Commander Gilder. We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against. No one not voting. We have a late filed resolution by Councilmember O'Connell. This approves a grant contract between Metro Government and Louisiana Homebuyer Education Collaborative to provide homeless performance review and recommendation support. I think many of you were here for the discussion during affordable housing. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember O'Connell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not much to follow up on for anybody who was here in the discussion of affordable housing. I encourage colleagues to support. We did have procedural issue on the legal side that meant we weren't quite ready to timely file, but we do want to keep it on that original timeline. So I hope folks will forgive that and let us late file this. So I'll be asking for a suspension of the rules and encourage colleagues to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We recommend approval, 8 in favor, 0 against. Next is BL 2022-1093, sponsors O'Connell, Allen, Withers, and Young. This authorizes Metro Department of Water and Sewer Services to enter into an agreement with PR Germantown LLC to provide improved sanitary service through the construction of improved stormwater system. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against. Sorry, 8 in favor, 0 against. That's what I wrote down. Next is BL 2022-1112. Sponsor is O'Connell. This authorizes the acquisition of a parcel of real property and approves the granting of an easement above and below the same parcel in connection with the development of a project located at 215 and 217 3rd Avenue North. Do I have a motion? Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? This was pulled off consent. Councilmember Saguaro.
All right, so disclaimer, I'm not an attorney and I have not done a lot of zoning and property stuff. So the only thing that jumped out at me in looking at the fiscal analysis is that it said there's a quitclaim deed from Metro, and it did say Metro is not the owner or has no ownership in the property. And I just thought that, is that typically how it's done?
We have John Cooper in the back who seems poised to answer this.
Oh.
We'll start with you, Mr. Cooper.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Councilor Suara. Yes, John Cooper with Waller. I represent RBN Equities, Rubicon Equities, who is the owner of the property on both sides of Bankers Alley, right over here. My client is constructing 2 buildings on each side of the alley that are going to connect in an arch over the alley. It's an incredible design. It's going to be fantastic for the city. The issue is that usually Metro does not own its right-of-way. It's owned by the property owners, the adjacent property owners. This alley is so old and is part of the original maps for the city of Nashville that it is unclear whether Metro whether has a right-of-way interest or actually who owns it. So what we're doing is we're deeding any interest that my client has in the alley in fee simple to Metro, and Metro in turn is granting an easement back to Rubicon to construct the arch over the alley and parking below the alley. So it's just it's a real estate transaction just to make sure that we have the right to build over the alley, and for that right we are paying Metro the same amount that other developers have paid for the same privilege.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any other questions? We appreciate it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We recommend approval. 8 in favor, 0 against. And I believe that is the end of the Budget Committee agenda. We are adjourned. In exactly 10 minutes, we will have, I think, a very quick meeting, joint meeting of the Budget and Planning Committees to talk about a prioritization project for the capital improvements budget.